left off, we had implemented a Mongo database and then connected to it using the Mongoose library. The database, I believe, was called Whiteboard cs5200, spring 2020, and we can take a look at the databases here. So show DBs, and indeed we have that database there. We can connect to it and say use that database, and in here we have several collections. I believe we have a couple of users, a couple of enrollment sections, and we showed you how to create individual documents, but as well how to make them related to one another. We created a many-to-many mapping using the enrollments. So we have db.users. We got a couple of users in there. There we go. We have Ian, George, Frank, blah, blah, blah. We also had sections. So sections. And section 4, 3, 2, 1, right? And then we created several enrollments where we have several students being enrolled in several sections. There we go. So we have I forget. I think we enrolled Alice in 2 different sections. We enrolled 2 different students in the same section. So these are the enrollments. We then connected to the database using Mongoose, right? And we connected to the database. We opened up a connection. We created a couple of DAOs that allowed us to interact with the users, with the sections, with the enrollments. We explored that. We also implemented a couple of many-to-many relationships between the users and the sections using this enrollment DAO. In the enrollment DAO, we implemented use cases such as being able to enroll a student in a section, find all the enrollments, find the students that were enrolled in a section, and then given a student, you find all the sections. So backwards, right? It's a two-way relationship. We used so this is the DAO, right? That exposes the data model to the rest of the application, and internally it's using this enrollments DAO, right? That is implemented in terms of the Mongoose model, right? We implemented the sections, the students, and the enrollments in terms of a Mongoose model that gave it a unique identifier that allowed you to interact with a schema that represented a collection inside of the Mongo database. These schemas were declared in their own file. In particular, we have this schema of the enrollment collection that allows us to mix and match a couple of non-key fields. Right? These are some fields that allow you to store some primitive data types such as letter grades, numbers, strings, whatnot. Right? But then also we also explore the fact that we can store not only primitive data types, but we also identifiers, right? That we are using as foreign keys. So we are storing object IDs, right? Which we can see here, right? These are object IDs. So an enrollment keeps track of what student is enrolled in what section, and then we are able to reference them, and then use an API to be able to retrieve the objects. See, is there a question here? You need to delete. Okay, yeah. So we're able to create that many-to-many relationship. We then used it and played around with this DAO from main, right? And so that when we retrieve students enrolled in a section or sections for a particular student, we saw that we can at first we saw that the enrollment, when the enrollment came through, the students and the sections, right, because of the schema, really the value of these fields is a primary key, a foreign key, right? There it is. It's just a number. So when we were retrieving the student in the section, we saw that the value that was coming back was an ID, and very much like if you use in a relational database and you retrieve a field that is a foreign key, its value will be some integer or some value that represents some other record in some other table. And oftentimes that reference really, it's only for that, right? It's so that you can then go and fetch the data from that other record, right? And the way you do that in a relational database is that you do a join, right? You say that, hey, you have these two tables, one is referencing the other, go fetch me the fields from both tables, right? And where the foreign key of one of the tables is equal to the primary key of the other table. Yes? And so we don't have that mechanism here in Mongo, right? It's a non-relational database. So instead, we have other mechanisms. In particular, Mongoose has this abstraction called populate that when it fetches records, or I'm sorry, documents from a non-relational database like Mongo, you can ask to have the engine, the Mongoose engine, to replace those fields, those foreign keys, replace them with the actual values of the records, right? In effect, implementing a join, right? So populate is somewhat the equivalent in Mongoose of the join operation, right? You're saying, hey, that student field, I don't want the ID. Instead, retrieve for me the object that it represents. You can ask for the entire object to be returned, or you can specify that you instead want a specific field to come back. Right here for the student, we only really care about the username. Obviously, there's other fields in there: first name, last name, whatnot, right? Date of birth, perhaps. And for the section, we only want the name of the section. This is useful for maybe displaying lists, right? We could have two versions of this populate. We could have or various versions of these finder methods, right? You can have a finder method that has no populate, right, where you literally want just the enrollment, okay, information, and you don't care about the records that the foreign keys reference. Maybe you don't care about those, but then you might also have versions, right, that implement different use cases. For instance, in this use case, it's given a section, I want the students in there. So in that use case, I'm interested in the information about the students. Maybe I want to display their first name, last name, email, whatnot, right? So I do want to populate the students, right? But maybe I'm not interested in populating the sections, right? Because presumably I'm navigating to a screen that is displaying, the information about students in a given section. So I already know what section I'm in, right? I just want the students, so I populate the students, or vice versa, right? Maybe I am a student and I want to have a list of all the sections that I'm enrolled in. So I already know who I am, right? I probably already have that information in my user interface. So the use case might be that I only really want to list all the sections that I'm enrolled in. So go fetch those sections, right? And that section information might have the name of the section, the course that they belong to, how many seats, right? Whether the section has been moved to online or on ground, what the status of that section. So I might want to populate that section. So you might have different implementations of this. Populating, not populating, or certain fields, depending of the use case that you might need. Okay. All right. Let's move on.